Sometimes the simplest sentences we say hide the most incredible secrets. Today, we're going to crack one of those open. We're going to look at a sentence you've probably used a million times, but it contains a kind of logic so weird it actually challenges how we think language even works. So let's just start with a quick question. How do you make sense of this sentence? I mean, really think about it. It sounds so simple, right? Almost trivial. But believe it or not, this little sentence holds a puzzle that had some of the smartest people in logic scratching their heads for a long, long time.
Okay, here it is. Different students answer different questions on the exam. Super simple, right? You get it instantly. There's a bunch of students, a bunch of questions, and they pair up. Easy. But here's the crazy part. When you try to feed that sentence into standard step-by-step logic, the kind that runs our computers and everything, it just breaks. It can't handle it. The whole system fails.
So to figure out why it breaks, we have to look at the rule book it's supposed to follow. And that brings us to this idea of linear logic. Think of it as the default programming for how we usually analyze language, one step at a time. Yeah, so standard logic is kind of like a chain of command or a set of dominoes. One thing has to happen first, and that decision controls everything that comes after it. So in our sentence, that would mean you either pick the students first, and then that choice dictates which questions get picked, or the other way around. There's always a leader and a follower, a clear hierarchy. And this is where you can really see the problem. On the left, you've got that linear scope, that chain reaction. You pick the students, then you pick the questions. But that's just not what the sentence means, is it? Now look at the right. That's what's really going on in our heads. It's called branching scope, and it's less like a chain of command and more like, well, a dance. The group of students and the group of questions are chosen at the same time, totally independent of each other. The meaning comes from how those two separate groups get paired up. Okay, so this is the big question, right? If the normal, one step at a time logic totally fails here, how on earth do our brains figure out this parallel meaning so easily? I mean, we do it without even thinking. What's the secret tool our brain is using that logic just completely missed? Well, the answer, it turns out, required a completely new way of looking at things. It was a huge breakthrough that meant throwing out the idea of a straight line and starting to see the hidden branches inside our own language. And that breakthrough has a name. This is the hero of our story, branching quantifiers. That's the fancy term for the secret tool our brains have been using all along. It's a type of logic where things like different students and different questions aren't in a hierarchy at all. Nope. They're processed independently at the exact same time. And this model, it perfectly captures what our puzzle sentence actually means. So let's just quickly break down what makes these things so special. First, they're nonlinear. No chain of command, remember. Second, they rely on independent choices. The students are chosen here, the questions are chosen there. It's also a form of what's called polyadic quantification, which is just a technical way of saying it's great at handling relationships between multiple groups at once. And this last one is super important. It's non-Phrygian. This is named after a famous logician, Frege, and all it really means is that you can't just break the meaning down into a simple, step-by-step recipe. It's more complex than that. You have to see the whole picture at once. Now, an idea this big doesn't just pop out of nowhere. This was a slow burn discovery, pieced together over decades by some really brilliant people who started to realize that our everyday language was way, way more sophisticated than the tools they had to analyze it. The story really kicks off back in 1959, when a mathematician named Leon Henkin first stumbled upon the core concept. But it was still just abstract math. Then, in the 70s, John Barwise was the one who made the connection and said, hey, this math stuff actually describes sentences in English. Fast forward to the 90s, Hela Scher came along and built a big, unified theory around it. And even today, people like Dag Westerstoel are still exploring what this all means. It's just a great example of how science builds on itself over time. All right, so we've cracked the code on one weird sentence. Cool. But so what? Why does any of this matter? Well, because a really good theory doesn't just solve one problem. It starts solving all sorts of other puzzles you didn't even know you had. And that's exactly what happened here. It turns out that these branching quantifiers are the key to unlocking a whole bunch of other complex sentences. They're especially good for what we call reciprocal constructions. You know, sentences that use phrases like each other. Okay, check this one out. Most men and most women admire each other. See the problem? It's the same trap as before. Old school linear logic would get all twisted up. It would have to say, okay, first I pick the women, and then, based on that, I'll pick the men who admire them. But that's not what the sentence is saying at all, right?
So, how does our new tool, branching logic, handle it? It's beautiful, really. First, it creates a set of most men. At the same time, totally independently, it creates a set of most women. And only then does it apply the relationship, admire each other, across those two separate, independently chosen groups. It's a parallel process, not a linear one. Simple as that.
And what this all points to is something pretty mind-blowing about, well, us, about our brains. The language we use every single day isn't just a string of words. It has this incredible built-in power for doing really complex, parallel processing. And the wildest part is, we do it instantly without even being aware of it.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Those simple sentences you use all the time, they're not so simple. They can be hiding these deep, elegant logical structures that are way more like a complex web than a simple straight line. Our language and our minds are just so much more powerful than we usually think. Which leaves us with one last kind of cool question to think about. If a sentence that seems as boring as different students answer different questions is hiding this amazing logical secret, what other incredible structures are just waiting to be found in the things we say every single day?